One.
Aloha, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this informational briefing, the Committee on Education, Wednesday, March 3rd. And we have our guests with us today to talk about in the informational briefing, we have representatives of the Sea Rider production to talk about their commercialism efforts. And we also have representatives from the Hawai'i Academia Group. And I will let you know that joining us virtually are members of my committee, Vice Chair of my committee, Senator Donna Mercado Kim. Also, Senator Favela is joining us virtually, as well as Senator Donovan De La Cruz. And I would like to welcome the representatives that are from Sea Rider Productions that joining us today, Ms. Ann Mahi, as well as Ms. Candy Suiso.
I believe Representative Kanuha is with us too.
Okay. Yes.
And also welcoming Senator Drew Kanuha from our committee. Thank you for joining us, Senator. Ms. Mahi, would you like to start? And Ms. Suiso. Thank you for joining us. You're muted.
Aloha, good afternoon, and thank you so much for giving us this time, Senator Kidani, Senator Mercado Kim, and the members of your Education Committee. We really are very excited to share some of the things that we've been working on over 2 years and present it to you and hopefully move forward. I want to start off by also wishing all you awesome wahine on right now a happy Girls' Day. So with that, I believe we have a presentation. It's a visual presentation. And if we could just start on that, I think the best way is just to visually walk you through what's been happening. Over 2 years ago, as a result of quite a few of our programs in the Department of Education that have been doing CTE programs, project-based learning type of projects working together and actually generating income. We thought if we could do some kind of a commercialism bill where we could allow these programs to actually bring in money and the money that they make come right back into the programs. Sort of like, I would say more of a social enterprise type of model. An enterprise that's educational, so we came up with an EduPrize. We came up with that one word. So Senate Bill 2051 and House Bill 2048 was introduced and passed 2 years ago. And it was an amendment to allow for the DOE to establish a commercial enterprise within the career technology education academies in the Department of Education schools. Next slide. Relating to education, it was introduced and passed, and this permits individual Department of Education schools and CTE academies or programs to engage in commercialism. Allows the Department of Education schools to engage in commercial enterprise, or we created, as I said earlier, EduPrizes. And it includes the sale of goods and services produced or for an individual school, which is tied to a career pathway, an academy or program. And a good example I'd like to use, I want to say back in the early 20s, our program was just beginning to do a lot of traveling, going nationally to compete and learn to see what some of the best and the brightest across the nation were doing. And we always wanted to have matching t-shirts and sweatshirts. And so we contacted Campbell High School, who I thought at the time was a really good example of an EduPrize, even though it was just part of the program. Troy Suoyoka was, I believe, the graphic arts teacher. And we would go to him every year for these t-shirts because we really wanted to support his program. The kids would design our logo, they would design everything, and then they would print it really quickly. They would turn it around within a week, very competent and very businesslike. And so they, that was just an example. And I know fast forward to 2020, We have our program, C-RAD Productions, which is very successful in actually modeling what Troy Suyoka did and bringing in a lot of income, where the kids are learning during the classroom how to create these logo items and then actually printing it themselves and then turning it around and going to farmers markets and online sales. It's become very successful. And then one more example I want to use is Waipahu High School has a very state-of-the-art culinary program. I know all of us on this thread right now has been to some of the nicest, most expensive fundraisers with some of the best chefs in Hawaii, with some of the best food. But I think if we look at what the students create at Waipahu under Elaine Matsuo, they certainly can compete. And that's another example of taking an edu prize within the school to have them continue to create money and feed it back into the program. So tied to Career Pathway Academy or program. So the next slide, again, is, just the bill allows the DOE schools to expand these CTE programs to allow for the safe products and services to deposit these funds right back into the school. So everything comes right back. All the money they make comes right back into the program. And we really feel this is essential as there's a need to utilize the money to support continuation improvement of the commercial edu prizes within each of these CTE programs. And I think this is so important even now, especially as we begin to open schools with a lot of these budget cuts. It's what better way than to have these programs begin to just create their own funding to be brought right back into their programs. And I'm going to turn it over to Anne.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. That really takes us on our journey. I think what was really important is that we were limited to being able to have sales and to be able to make a profit, because based on the current, rules and regs for the department, any of our state programs would only make enough to break even. And so that was one of the things that we had talked about. How can we make sure that we're providing opportunities for a real world type of environment for learning, and that these students would be able to really understand and feel like true entrepreneurs in a real world situation, and not just we can only break even and not be able to produce services or goods that could actually be utilized to expand their program, as well as, even thinking out of the box, providing part-time work for these students after hours and during weekends, and actually having sales out in the public or within a commercial type enterprise, and being able to take that money and feeding it back into the school program. So that was the dream for all of us as we started out, and we thank the legislature for the leading in this and passing that amendment to the commercialism bill law. So our goals are, next slide, are simply to be able to support the development of these CPE enterprise enterprises. And like I said again, it really is about giving our students real world experiences. We want them to learn how to be entrepreneurs. We want them to be able to innovate and create. We want them to have that experience of running a business and really be able to work together with community and businesses to really start to prepare them for the workforce. We want them to be able to move forward, whether it's getting into a job situation or getting into post-secondary to hone their skills even better. So these are the goals that we talked about in our committee work over the, I think it was the 2019 school year. Next. So again, this is kind of what we've been talking about. An enterprise is an educational enterprise. We have we want our students to be ready to be independent, not only as learners, but as those that really see a future for themselves. We had I went to visit Waianae High School, and there was a young man, and he was in the special education program. Very quiet, But he started taking people to visit, and it would explain every part of that marine science oval farm. And when we asked him, what do you want to be? He says, you know what? I'm learning so much. I mean, he knew a lot more than a lot of us did who, went to college, and he could explain everything. And he said, my dream is to be able to go out in the community and create a business like this for myself and my family. And that's what this is all about. So how can the Department of Education support EduPrizes? We started a committee, like I said again, in 2019. We met regularly under Assistant Superintendent Rodney Luke. I was there. We had principals from the Hawaii Academy who were interested in participating in designing. So it was Lisa Hagi from Waianae High School, Keith Hayashi from Waipahu, and we also had John Henry Lee from Campbell High School. And we were there trying to figure out what kinds of things we needed to have in place in order to truly implement an EduPrize in a school. We did have the Department of Education, CTE branch there. Troy was there with other staff members, and we had an opportunity to start to think about, so what is it that we need to be able to do, and how can we move forward? So we said we need to continue with that EduPrize committee. We need to ensure that there is a statewide consistency. Once we create this implementation plan, we need it to be consistent so that it can be implemented statewide in all high schools that have academies. We want to be sure that as we create the implementation guidelines through the pilot, that the Department of Education will then be able to take that and start looking at creating more definite administrative rules and regulations. We also want to be sure that we're working with a group of high schools who have really invested in developing academies in their schools. And these three principals that sat in our committee are three very dedicated principals who have implemented academies and given opportunities for their students to create, innovate, and to learn about the world of work. Next. So these are some of the things that we said we would need to have. We need to have business and marketing plans, and this should be part of the CTE program development. We also, and that's not going to be too hard to do, okay? I mean, we just want to be sure it's integrated so that it's part of a strategic plan from the state as well as in the schools through the CTE program. The next thing would be really, how do we create a foundational financial management system, because this is really different from what the state schools can currently do. Right now, everything is really about purchase orders and payments, in a very antiquated way. So our question was, in order for us to really be thinking in the future, how can we actually do a website where people can see the products, order the products, we process, they pay, like Foursquare, Shopify, PayPal. These are all things new to me because I'm in the old generation, but when you think about everybody else, this is how they operate. So how do we start to update the department's ability to create those kinds of systems for us? We have programs that are ready, and we mentioned them before, like the Seawriter Productions with graphic art, and video, digital media. We have the Waianae High School Marine Science Learning Center with OVO development. And then we have the culinary arts that Candy talked about, as well as the Natural Resources Academy. So this is really, we're close. We just need to continue to move this with everybody's help. So next slide, and it's Lisa Hagi, principal of Waianae High School. Lisa?
Aloha, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us, Lisa.
Nani and Kim, we really appreciate an opportunity to share with you the progress we've made and what we feel we still need to work on together in order to really operationalize the commercialism bill. At the school level, one of the biggest challenges we have is, and this is not the department's fault. The department is set up to do other things, and we're asking it to do something out of its bailiwick. So we're asking the department to figure out ways to support the commercialism bill by developing these ordering, processing, payment, and delivery systems, many of which are online. What happens is that we currently have a system in which we can do fundraising, and it's very explicit, and there are checks and balances that protect the staff and protect the students as well as people purchasing, so that there's no loss of funds, et cetera, et cetera. We're asking to go a step further, and we don't have systems that help us to do that yet. So I'll give you an example on the next slide. In order for our students to truly begin to get a sense of entrepreneurship, we need to give them those opportunities in the school setting. And what happens is that within a school setting, what we believe is that we can allow them to make mistakes in a safe way, in a way that does not cause any personal disruption into their own lives, and sets them up for the real world type of situations that they may encounter if they become indeed entrepreneurs, because there's nothing our state needs more than more small businesses. We need to be able to support that, and we would like to be able to do that through this ability to engage in commercialism. Students will make decisions about operating costs, marketing, they'll do surveys, they will succeed and they will fail, and that's okay, because that is what learning is all about. And it's better that they learn in school and not learn with their family's money or real loans in the real world. Next slide. The biggest challenge for us at the school level is managing the volume and the particulars of a business, the fiduciary components of a business, while still operating under the Department of Education. Currently, if we use either the state FMS system or the local school KEV system, there's a very rigorous and appropriate system of writing PREOs, getting approval. Principal has to sign all of them. They go through multiple hands. They get checked and cross-checked. But that system is going to be too cumbersome and not conducive to the real-time turnaround needed by these CTE businesses. Businesses will fail if we don't have the underlying system that allows them to operate like a business. And we look forward to, I know the department has been working on this. It's not an easy solution that they are having to figure out how to address. But this is exactly what we need to be working on in order to move forward. And I'm not sure who's next. Anne.
So we're going to have Principal Keith Hayashi. Go back to the other slide, if you will. Yes, Keith?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Senators. Keith Hayashi, Principal at Waipahu High School. Kind of building upon what Kaz Huggy was sharing, the Hawaii Academy schools are maybe one slide back, I think. Thank you. The Hawaii Academy schools are a conglomeration of 21 high schools across the state that implement the career academy design. And through that design, what we really focus on is providing authentic learning opportunities for our students. And so this the Hawaii Academy Schools really looks forward to continuing to work with the CTE office at the state office to establish a system for all of this to occur. In speaking to some of the principals at the Hawaii Academy Schools, they are looking, as Ann shared, in areas of culinary, looking at business and entrepreneurship, and designing different kinds of projects. Also in natural resources, growing and perhaps even selling, meeting health requirements, and selling fruits and vegetables and such. So the schools are really focused on providing these kinds of opportunities for our students. And so some of the areas that, on the bottom part of that slide, students will make decisions on. When we look at that, those are really real-world type of experiences that our students would be engaged in. So the Hawaii Academy Schools definitely are in full support of this effort.
Okay, thank you, Principal Hayashi. If we can go to that, the next slide after that. So this is the proposal that we'd like to put up front. This is what we need to do in order to move forward. We need so the first thing is we ask that we be allowed to have a pilot so that we can really start to develop, policy, regulations, and procedures, and that the pilot would actually be working through the Hawaii Academy Schools, and that we would look at 2 or 3 high schools that would be willing to work together, because they hold regular meetings to really start to develop the plan for this implementation, looking at how we can be consistent, how we can keep everyone safe, how we can actually mitigate any kind of liabilities, and create that financial system that would actually update what the department currently has, so that we can actually take this EduPrize and be fully running. The second thing is that we really do need the support of the CTE state program. We need their guidance and support, and thank you. They've always been at our meetings. They also attend the Hawaii Academy's meetings, so they're very up to date on the kinds of work that's being done. We need to have them work with us on creating that EduPrize handbook that we will develop through the pilot. If they can help us really start looking at any kind of initial funding through the CTE program's funds, strategies and resources, create partnerships and connections with commercial enterprises and business resources, be that, that center for a single point of contact where we can actually have, a source, a resource for checking with high schools, checking to see who's interested. And then I think the last part is also the coordination of that professional development that should continue through the Hawaii Academy's consortium. But the thing about the Hawaii Academy's consortium is that it's never closed. Keith and the rest of the principals have always opened it up to any high school that's interested in joining, and they provide collegial support. And they were able to get some funding to get, I think, a consultant who is well-versed in creating academies to actually work with them in their regular meetings. So I think that this is a perfect opportunity to now say this is where we need to go with the development of an EduPrize. And we really do appreciate this opportunity to share, and we hope that we can have this happen. And we really, again, mahalo nui, because when we work together, no task is impossible. And we say in Nanakuli Wainai, na kako na kiki apau. The reason we do this is because the children belong to all of us, and we have to hold hands and create that net so that no one falls through that net. So mahalo nui, we really do appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. Members, do you guys have any questions before we go on to the DOE's presentation? Any questions? I wanted to ask anyone on the panel there, If they could name some of the schools that are participating now in this Hawai'i Academy's pilot schools?
Keith Hayashi can.
Hi, let's see. The Hawaii Academy schools include, let's see, on Oahu, we have the 6 schools in the Leeward district. So Waipahu, Pearl City, Nanakuli, Waianae, Campbell Kapolei. We also have Aiea High School, Castle High School, Kailua High School, McKinley, Farrington, Kaimuki, let's see, Waimea, Kauai High School on Kauai, Waimea, Kapa'a, Waikea High School on the Big Island. Recently joining us was Kohala, Kealakea, let's see, Maui on Maui, and you know what? I probably missed a couple of them, but the Hawaii Academy schools span mostly all islands.
Wow, that's pretty impressive list. I thought there were going to be 3 or 4 schools that you named, and I think you rattled off about 15 or 20.
The total, those are the total number of schools. I think the schools though that are looking to establish a pilot are maybe just a couple of schools. They're all at different places through our academy journey. So those schools that are ready to embark in this, maybe 2 or 3 as pilots.
Thank you for that, Principal Hayashi. The other question I had is that on that slide that has number 5 and 6, operating and EduPrize includes, and a system, number 6, a system for managing the money needs to be identified and in place. Who did you guys think would be someone who could do the number 6, managing the money needs to be identified and in place? And I think you talked about a consultant. Is that something the consultant would do, or something that you think can be done within the DOE?
Yeah, no, the consultant was actually working to create the academy structure and infrastructure with these schools that are in the Hawaii Academies. What we're talking about here, we were working with Brian Hallett. Brian would show up at our meetings and listen very carefully about, how can we possibly create this different type of money system that could help us, because he knew the limitations of what the department could do. So right before the pandemic, it was really having these conversations about, so how can we update the department to allow these pilot schools to be able to have this kind of accounting system, like even a point of sale kind of system, an online ordering and processing system. So that's where we left off. We're just having that, okay, Brian, how can we do this? How can we make it happen? And he started working on it. So it would be interesting to see where the update is from the department and his work.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So members, if there are no further questions, I'm going to go on and ask Superintendent Kishimoto and her DOE team to go ahead with their presentation. Thank you for joining us, Superintendent.
Thank you, Chair Kidani and Vice Chair Kim. I'm going to just speak for a few minutes, and then I'm going to turn this over to Dan Miyamoto and the team. I am going into a Department of Health meeting, so I apologize. These meetings are back to back. But there's a couple of things I want to state. One is I thank everyone who's on. Candy, nice to see you. It's been a while since I've been on your end, seeing your work directly, as well as Ann Mahi. Keith Hayashi and Lisa have been leaders in this work, along with other principals. Lisa now in her work as complex area superintendent. I want to mention, under our 2030 Promise Plan, which has is still in action. We haven't had a whole lot of public conversation in the middle of this pandemic about the Promise Plan, but if you go through the deliverables, you can see that a lot of our work is focused on innovation, on empowerment through design. And under the innovation section, there is a section dedicated specifically to commercial enterprise. This is an area where we know we have to move into. We've got to update our financial structure to support this, our policy structure. We need to get back to the legislature if there are any legislative matters as we move through this process of doing our work differently. We have Dan Miyamoto on the call today, and he's in charge of CTE. CTE is an area we can look at tapping into to look at next level support to move this work forward. And so I want to emphasize that is in fact possible. And also the team that Keith Hayashi has included me in the past on the Hawaii Academies Coalition meetings to show me what the principals are designing, because we really want the principals at the school level designing all of this innovation work, and appreciate those principals doing that work. That really is the right place to advance this work. And so I just want to say that the department is fully supportive of moving this forward. We've been unfortunately impacted by this pandemic for a year. There's a lot that we had to kind of shift our focus, but this is the future, the now and the future of the department as we continue to talk about powerful school design models. And we have the right thought leaders, some of which you see here, and many others who have been working on this. I'm going to hand this over to Dan. I believe Dan was going to share a couple of slides to just show you what where we are in our work from the department level.
Thank you, Dr. Kishimoto. Good afternoon, Senator Kidani, Senator Makaru Kim, and members of the Senate Education Committee.
Dan, you're muted.
He's not muted. We can hear him, but it's kind of soft. Is there a way you can turn up the volume?
Okay, let me take out my mask here. Testing, how's this now?
Better, thank you.
Okay. Once again, good afternoon, Senator Kidani, Senator Makaru Kim, and the members of the Senate Education Committee. The department has put together a presentation to provide an update on the implementation of the Commercial Enterprise in the Department of Education Act 164. So if we can have the slides be brought up on screen. Thank you very much. The presentation is in three parts. The first part will be an overview of the work the department has been engaged around commercial enterprises. Second part will be an update on where we currently are. And the third part will be the next steps to further the work on commercial enterprises. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of the work the department has been engaged in the form of a timeline. Some of this has been already covered in the previous presentation, so I'd just like to highlight some of the updates in this timeline. One of them is out of the work group that was mentioned earlier, two legislative bills were created, SB 2263 and SB 2487. They were introduced in the 2020 legislative session. SB 2263 would have amended HRS 302A-420 and added commercial enterprise to that statute. And for SB 2487, it would have amended the 302A-448 to make commercial enterprise activities exempt from chapters 76, 78, 89, 103, and 103D, which has to do with civil service, employment, contracts, and the procurement code. And also out of that work group was the implementation of a pilot project with a high school, and that pre-work was done in January, and in March COVID came into play, which interrupted the work. But the department still was able to complete a draft guidance for the commercial enterprises that was done in July. Can we go to the next slide, please? So it's the status of where we are now. And so we have the draft guidance. It still needs to be finalized, but we anticipate it will be ready for implementation in next school year. We also identified an account where commercial enterprise revenue could be held. And the department is just beginning work on looking at an electronic transaction system, which would be able to support commercial enterprises in the future. And so that's a summary of where we are now. Next slide, please. However, we know there's still more work to do, and for the immediate next steps, in fourth quarter, next quarter, we plan to identify a high school to implement a pilot project for commercial enterprises. We also, again, with the guidance, finalize the guidance, distribute it next school year, hold informational sessions. And we anticipate possible several commercial enterprise projects by the end of next year. And what we realized from the work group conversations is that commercial enterprises will vary in degree, some very complex, and so we know there will be challenges, but we are committed to look at the resources, put in the structures necessary so that schools can implement commercial enterprises as they envision. And that completes our presentation on update to commercial enterprises. Thank you.
Is that the end of the presentation, Dan?
Yes, that is.
Okay. Members, are there any questions? Dan, on your slide that says where we are now, the account that's been identified to use for revenue generated from the commercial enterprises says the department is seeking approval for electronic customer transactions. Can you explain that? Who are we waiting approval from, and how long have we been waiting?
Yeah, so I can defer to Brian Hallett to respond to that.
Oh, okay. Brian?
Hi, good afternoon, Senator. Brian Hallett, CFO. The account that's being referred to would be the School Level Agriculture and Industrial Pursuits account. That was renamed a couple of years ago. It was previously referred to as the Lahaina Luda Boarding Facilities Fund. So that's our account S301, authorized in statute by 302A 420. So which allows all net profits arising from industrial pursuits to be deposited into this account. So that's where the money can flow through. Now, in regards to the online processing component of it, we only very recently, it's just been a few weeks now, have been working with a vendor who is standing up credit card processing for one of our schools, Waipahu Community School for Adults. It's been incredibly productive, quick work. We were amazed at how quickly it's coming together. We approached that not quite as a pilot project, but as sort of a test project, and we're looking to work with Hawai'i. And I just mentioned that to Disa just yesterday, they would be our next I guess project to work on. What's very promising about this vendor is that PayPal processing is part of the array of servicing that they can support. Now, sorry, but we are in the midst of a major replacement of our financial management systems. So for the time being, it wouldn't be electronic deposit into our accounts. We're still in the process of building that system. It'll be handled manually by check, and once we get past go live in July with our new system, we will then be looking to make the connections so that it would be more seamless or integrated. So that's just a quick update on where we are with electronic processing, credit card processing, payments. As far as the approval comment, the vendor that we're using has a long-standing pre-existing contract with the state, and it involves an approval process that goes through a committee that's associated with ETS. So I think that's why we've been able to move so quickly, because it's an existing solution.
So Brian, while you are doing the pilot project with Waianae High School, and it will not be an electronic process, as you explained, And so where will the checks be deposited?
So
Into
we
that
will,
fund?
the payment would be online, and that would be electronic. It would be able to accept credit cards, and we've been informed that PayPal is an option that can be used, and we would like to engage in the coming weeks with the YNI folks and get moving on that, the statement of work and whatnot. It's the monthly deposits of the proceeds would be coming in the form of a check from the credit card processor and be deposited into our accounts. In the future, you know, we can set it up with through the automated clearing house and electronic processing straight into our financial management system.
And when is that pilot program starting?
Well, like I guess sorry, I used the wrong term. It's not really a pilot. It's just a further expansion or a rollout of online processing. And as soon as we get set with Waipahu Community School for Adults, which should be within days. So within a couple of weeks, we should be starting conversations or being able to start conversations with the folks out in Waianae and seeing how we can connect that vendor with their needs.
So the, you know, the process of how the school receives the funding and how often they have to turn it into the Department of Education, that's all been set up already? And actually, Waipahu High School is a great model because they have their own credit union on campus, so. Anyway.
Yeah, we're looking at monthly deposits, and you know, what's exciting is there's possibility, there's kind of two components to this. There's the storefront component, and I don't know what exactly and how Waipahu or Waianae would want to set up a storefront online if that's what they want, or they just want the ability to do credit card processing or PayPal payments. But we would want to look at those two possible options and with that vendor. Those are both within the wheelhouse of that vendor.
So has there been a curriculum put forward or written for this process, you know, to so that the other schools that are interested in doing this can jump on board, or who's going to do the training and who's going to you know, put up the guidelines? Is that with the DOE or is it with Candy and Ann and the group that has started this EduPrize information?
Well, since my mic is live, I jump in and say, I'm looking at the Office of Fiscal Services' role is to provide the infrastructure in order for these processes to happen. I would like to look to CTE to set up the curriculum associated with that.
Yes, it would be the expansion of the guidance document draft that we already have, and it would be somewhat of a living document, continue to be expanded as these new structures get into place and providing information for schools to access that.
Dan, do you have a copy of that curriculum or draft or whatever you're calling it?
Draft guidance, yes, we can
yeah,
send
that we
to
could
you,
have.
definitely.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you. So the implementation program that you say is for fall and winter of 2021 is it looks like it's starting sooner than that. Am I correct? Are you guys ready to go? Brian, Dan?
Yes, so our fourth quarter, we would like to identify a high school to get started with as a pilot, basically to pick off where we left off in January.
January of 2020, 2021?
Yes, earlier in 2020, we had started a pilot, and then we were going to pick up where we left off again, starting fourth quarter, next quarter.
So in the rollout, you know, Principal Hayashi rattled off, I don't know, I couldn't keep up with him, but I want to say 15, 20 of schools that are already participating. So have they been given any update or information to get them ready to, you know, be ready to get on board once you guys are ready to receive everything that they want to be doing?
No, not at this time. We did not provide all of the academy schools the same information. We're anticipating next school year, the guidance would be finalized, and at that time, we'd make that available to all the high schools.
Members, does anyone have questions? I know that when we heard the original bill that Senator Kim had some concerns. Senator Kim, do you still have questions related to, I think it was the payment or somebody other than students receiving pay for this? I know it's been like 3 years or so, but that was one of the things. And you're muted, Donna.
Sorry, Chair, you have a pretty good memory, if I am like to do. What was
It must have been that vaccination I had.
did the opposite to me. It got my memory cloudy. I think the presentation was pretty good, very informative. How are you folks overseeing to make sure and to make checks to see that, you know, the payments and everything is going where it's supposed to do? Do you do like random checks or, I mean, you know, just on a day-to-day basis? I know you're not going to be overlooking everything, but at some point you have to make some kind of checks, right?
I know that was one of the conversations that really was drawn out in the work group and post-work group conversation, is the balance of monitoring and security and accountability versus flexibility and freedom and expediting the financial process. And that's some of what took a while until we came to the determination of this one account that we could use. But I think Brian Hallett can expand on that more.
Yeah, I just lead in by saying this is something the department is wanted to support. It's aligned with the Promise Plan. It's the conversation we started a couple years ago. And as Disa had mentioned earlier about two types of methods. There's the state system, our financial management system, which would rely on the account that I use, that profit, the agriculture and industrial pursuits. If using that account, which would run through our financial management systems, all the checks and balances associated with that system would be in play. The alternative was mentioned is our student activity funds, which are funds held outside the state treasury, which are slightly more flexible, or there is more flexibility, and those are, like I said, held outside of the state treasury. That's the alternative. But I don't think that the current statute that authorizes that student activity fund is broad enough to fully capture, I think, the eventual build out of these commercial enterprises as the statute currently exists. Being that statute, which is 302A 1130, speaks about those funds are to be used for, the department may assess and collect special fees and charges from students for co-curricular activities. I think what we're talking about is becoming a co-curricular activity, these commercial enterprises. It's aligned or supporting curriculum. But that's a little narrow because we're only talking about money collected or charged against students. And I think what these programs are looking to do is broader than that and seeking to be able to collect funds from outside just students. So that may be an area that could use some adjustment as we go down this path, broadening of that authorization to use the local school accounts, which are more flexible than having to run funding through our financial management system.
As far as when you disperse the funds out of the account, how many people have access to do that?
Through financial management system, it should be one logon per school. I mean, there might be 2 or 3 front office staff at schools that may be sharing accounts or access, but there should be one access, one logon.
Okay, what have you guys done to eliminate the possibility or the temptation for funds being embezzled? I mean, we've had that situation happen in the past where certain people that were in charge were siphoning out some monies and not finding out these kinds of things till down the road. I mean, have those safeguards been put into place?
I think those safeguards and procedures were always in place. Whether they were followed or not has been an issue, and an internal audit has been very active in going through and reviewing the schools. You're talking about dual controls and signing and reviewing the records before signing off on payments. As Lisa was mentioning about the principal having to sign off on the purchase orders, and that's a big part of our dual control.
Okay, and that's why the original question was, is there like checks every now and then just to, because like you said, you know, the rules and procedures are there, but whether people are following it. So is there some kind of ways that there's some random checks that they are in fact following what they're supposed to be doing?
Yes.
And that's real life. That's real life as well, right? I mean, that happens in any business. That to try to eliminate any kind of temptation for people that's handling the monies, that they're not going to be able to siphon it off in any way. I'm not kind of point fingers at anybody, obviously, but I think those are real life lessons that students need to learn, right?
And I think that online electronic payments will actually help reduce risk. I think when we're taking and handling cash, that is a huge worry.
Right.
So we're moving in the right direction. But I would point out we do have supports not only between the SASAs at the schools and the principals, but also our complex area business managers, our CASs, and as I mentioned earlier, our internal audit functions to go out and periodically review and audit these local school accounts and school activities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Brian, and I will await the draft from Dan, because I think in following up on Senator Kim's concern, now with what financial institutions are able to do electronically, is that some of you may get notices every time a check or a payment, something is removed from your account. And I think something should be in place, whereas the people who are actually authorized to do the transaction should be separate from the person that actually gets the accounting or the notification that a transaction has occurred. So there are at least 2 people in the know all the time that something is going out of the account. So that's just a recommendation, but I look forward to see Dan's draft. I wanted to ask either Ann or Candy, if you're still on, have you guys reviewed the draft, or have you guys made recommendations or any amendments to the draft? You're muted.
No, I would like to see a copy of the guidance document?
Yes.
I'm not familiar with that. I would like to also, if I could see a copy and work with you, Dan, on that. I'm not familiar with that. I did not know one existed.
Yep, no
Okay.
problem.
Well, Dan and Brian, the draft was done in July 2020, and that was 8 months ago. So I think I'd appreciate it if there were more, energy involved in trying to keep everybody on board and keep this rolling, because, the original bill has been, 4 years in the making. And this is a real, very impressive curriculum for our young people. And just going through this, the slides, et cetera, I'm actually very impressed with, how far this has come since I first heard about it and since we introduced the bill. But, I know we've, been through the pandemic and we're still in it, but still, that's a long time. If there is a working group out there that's trying to help move this along, they should be included and receiving the information that you guys have already prepared, Dan. So I would appreciate it if you would get copies out to whoever the working group is, and I don't know who they all are, so that we can continue to move forward on this.
Yes.
And I guess at that point, we'll be able to know whether or not your working, your guidance draft includes the recommendations that were made, by the working group back, I don't know how long ago it was, and we had the recommendations from the Senate Bills 2263 and 2487 that were introduced to address the working group's considerations, and I'm not sure if those were in there because I haven't seen it either, and I wouldn't know anyway without, having Candy and Ann, look at it and address it too. So the sooner the better, Dan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We will follow up on that immediately.
I appreciate that. So, so with all of the information and the number of schools involved in this, where are we going next? I mean, I guess the draft is the guidance draft is an important document for us to be reviewing and moving forward. Because if you want to, I think your timeline ends at October 2020 on this review that you did, Dan. So I'm not sure if anything's happened after that. But if we are going to make this ready for the next school year, that's just a few months away. So I wanted to know what are the plans, and is there a timeline on that as to when this is given to the schools to help them roll out the curriculum?
Yes, we can create a new timeline, including the pilot for next quarter, and then all of the follow-up actions that's going to be attached to that, including the distribution of the guidance document in its finalized form, and we can share that with you, definitely.
So this question is probably for Brian as well as Dan, and Ann and Candy, you can jump in if you have any comments, but knowing that you have this many schools involved and it seems it's rolling along and just waiting for written guidance, which was done 8 months ago, but they haven't seen yet. Is it possible to allow schools that are ready to implement a pilot to do so and use what they find as startup to influence the review, whether it's over the summer or getting ready for that rollout? Because I'm sure you're still going to have to tweak it. But I'm thinking the schools are all there, waiting to do something, but not knowing, if they have the approval. So if, you may have guidance, but, without the DOE stamp, it's hard for them to move forward. But are you okay with these edu prizes moving forward in a way that they can start learning, rather than put a halt to everything and not knowing if they can start or not?
Yeah, so one of the basic requirements for all of the various models was the financial component of where these revenues could be stored. And since we identified that, but again, as Hallett has mentioned, that's within the DOE financial system. However, schools with activities that are ready to engage in the commercial enterprise aspect of it, and if that account is meets their needs to get started with where they are, then that could be implemented fairly quickly.
Good. Comments, Brian?
If setting up through our existing financial management systems, they could set that up today. That's not a problem. If looking to use the local school account, you folks might want to be looking at House Bill 1298 when it comes over the non-general fund, and possibly amending or expanding the use of the local school account language. That's section 302A1130. That would be I think that'd be a good vehicle to make that kind of amendment in, and we could work with Ann or anyone to craft some language that would work.
Okay. Members, any further questions? Any closing comments from Candy, Ann? Ann? Ms. Mahi, please.
Okay, again, thank you.
Oh, she's frozen.
So
And you're frozen.
it's,
Okay, I'll jump in. Ann? I think she's still talking. We'll let her get through.
no, you go ahead.
No, I just wanted to thank everybody. I think this is the first time we've been able to get our legislators and CTE, as well as the principals, the two rockstar principals that I think the schools are going to lead. I think it's really important right now. I can't emphasize enough how critical we're in a small window of opportunity to make this happen quickly, with already what's been started, what's in place, and as we open schools, because we're going to open schools and we all know it's going to be very different. So this is the opportunity to get really creative, out of the box, and move our kids into the 21st century. They're going to be learning differently, and especially with these budget cuts, if this is the opportunity to get our kids to create their own income, to bring it right back into their program, we can't miss the boat on this. So, thank you for everybody who's been working really hard on this. I know it's not easy. Dan, your position up there with CTE is, I'm sure, has been a lot and through the pandemic, but thank you for what you and Brian, is that? Brian have been doing, and I'm here to help. If you need any assistance, I'm retired, but I am working probably harder than I have while I was working, so please contact me. But thank you, Senator Kidani, especially Senator Korkanokin, for leading this charge. We really appreciate this. We got to get this done. Let's do this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very, very enthused about this program, and I think not too long ago we talked about financial literacy and all of that, and I think this would really help to bring that to all of the students in the schools, even if they're not in any one of these school Hawai'i Academy pilots that you're doing with these EDU Prize programs. But just the fact that this will help them to become literate, financially literate, this gives them the resources to help their classmates, and it gives the school a resource already because you will have something to work with. So I do appreciate the diligence you, Candy, and Ann, and all the rest of you, Principal Hayashi, Disa. I think this is something that is really, really needed for our students, and I really appreciate the hard work that you guys have done. Brian and Dan and Superintendent, who I know is not there now, but thank you very much for continuing your work, and I look forward to getting the documents and having the working group with Candy and review it and get back to you as soon as possible so that we can move forward and be ready to go with it in the first quarter of the next school year. Thank you. Members, no further questions? This hearing is adjourned. Mahalo.
Thank